All right, security guard insurance. What coverage do you need? How much does it usually cost? And how can you get a quote? My name is Nate Jones. I own Wexford Insurance. We're an independent insurance agency that operates in 48 states outside of Alaska and Hawaii. And we insure security guard officer companies all over the nation. Some of those are armed security, unarmed security. Some do construction sites, warehouses, government facilities, schools, nightclubs, bars, restaurants, grocery stores, all over the nation. If we've seen so many, it's crazy. And this is a very niche focused business. So there's specific coverages that you need to work with an expert. If you're not working with an expert when it comes to security guard insurance, then you could be hung out to dry when it comes to a claim. So you really want to work with somebody who knows what they're doing, okay? So what coverages do you need? Bare minimum, if you're just starting out, or if you're a big security company, you need general liability insurance. That covers bodily injury and property damage that you cause by accident on the job site, okay? Or potentially on purpose, but it was an accident, whatever is determined there by the claim. General liability, property damage, that means you're doing security guard, and let's say you're looking at a warehouse, and for some reason, one of your employees or you cause the building to burn down. God forbid. That would cover that. Bodily injury is more the important one. Let's say you're doing your duties and you have to reprimand somebody, maybe by accident, or you're trying to guard a warehouse and you tackle somebody and you hurt somebody and then they want to sue you. The bodily injury will likely cover that potential claim. Okay, so every claim is different, obviously, but I'm telling you in a summary here, so please take it. Every policy is different, every claim is different, but the grand summary of that policy is to protect property damage and bodily injury. Okay, another tie-in to that is we suggest that you don't only get general liability, but you get professional liability. Professional liability is I hire you to do security at my company, and while you're on the job, somehow somebody breaks in and steals something or causes damage or essentially does something that you were there to prevent them from doing, and that caused them a financial harm. You're providing a professional duty. Just like me as an insurance agent, I provide professional advice as a licensed insurance agent in 48 states. You're providing a professional service, and if you fail to do so, and that results in bodily injury, property damage, or financial harm in some way, that's where somebody could potentially sue you for your error and omission or professional liability or lack thereof, right? So let's say you guys made a mistake, somebody got through, somebody stole something, and then they want to come after you for that. So that's why it's good to have a general liability in addition to a professional liability from your liability standpoint, okay? On top of that, if you start to get other people that work with you, let's say you're scaling your security guard officer company and you have workers that are working for you, okay? Well, then we need a workers' compensation policy in case that individual gets hurt on the job site. Let's say they hurt their back, they slip and fall. Let's say somebody's trying to break in and they hurt that person. You're even unarmed and somebody comes in and takes you out, like tackles you and knocks you out, and that employee's hurt, right? We want to make sure that employee, if they are hurt during the course of working for you, that it's important to cover them. Even if they are 1099'd, depending on your state, a lot of states look at it as how you treat an employee. If you tell them when to be there, when to show up, how to do their job, how long to be there, if you treat them like an employee, a spade's a spade, they could be entitled to workers' compensation benefits. So the downside of that is even though you 1099 somebody doesn't mean that that's a special card that you don't have to pay for work comp. In fact, you could be brought into work comp lawsuits that we've seen people that did not have work comp sub something out to somebody else who didn't have work comp, comes back on them, they get a judgment. So it's very important that if somebody is a 1099 that they have their own insurance, their own policy. Now, if they don't have that, then you need to probably cover them on your own workers' compensation policy. Okay, the next thing you need is commercial auto insurance for security guards or hired and non-owned auto insurance for security guards. If your employees are using their own personal vehicles to do patrol, then you need hired and non-owned. What does that cover? Well, if they're driving on the clock using their personal vehicle and they hit somebody, who's going to get sued? Well, the guy driving the car, employee that you hired 2 weeks ago, is probably going to say, well, I was driving for ABC Security. So then the person who got hit is going to say, okay, I'm going to sue ABC Security and potentially sue the employee too. The employee's going to be like, hey, I wasn't driving for me, I was driving for you. Boom. Now you're involved in a lawsuit. So the hired and non-owned there covers if you get a rental car, as well as if employees are using their vehicles for work-related incidences. A commercial liability or commercial auto policy, that's where you would schedule vehicles on there that you own and that employees are driving. That's a traditional auto policy for auto liability for security guard officers, and that's just a standard policy. We always make sure that we at least try to offer a hired and non-owned policy if employees are using their own vehicles, or for some reason if you're using your personal vehicle. Okay, so let's go through, let's review this real quick, and then I'll tell you kind of where the costs begin at. General liability, professional liability, workers' compensation for security guards, and commercial auto with hired and non-owned there. Those are the four main coverages that we suggest. Outside of that, sometimes the bigger contracts will require you to have an umbrella policy for excess liability. Usually that might mean, hey, we want a $2 million general liability or $3 million. Well, you do a $1 million and we do an excess policy above that. Sometimes they want it over the work comp, general liability, and auto altogether. Sometimes they don't. So every situation is different. That's why it's good for you to work with an expert who can review the contract and make sure that the policy that you're getting matches the requirements so that you can get on the job and you can get paid. Sometimes we've seen people do a job and they verified insurance after. They didn't have the right insurance and they're stuck. They didn't get paid. So then you're fighting after the fact. It's good to work with somebody who knows what you're looking at so you can make sure you get paid. Okay? What does it cost? So for general liability, depending on the state, it varies. And it varies depending on what you're doing. There's low risk security unarmed, like warehouses, neighborhood patrol, construction sites, very low risk. And there's high risk, armed schools, government facilities, bars, taverns. So you have low risk, which on the low end, you can get anywhere from probably like minimum $1,500 to $2,000 a year for a standard general liability policy for security guards for low risk. Okay, so $1,000 to $1,500 for the year. You're usually going to have to put 25-30% down on that because you're a startup. We might have to go to a kind of a lesser market, a higher risk market, because they don't know of your history. And then on the high risk side, usually minimum premium is around $2,500 to $5,000 for high risk security guard insurance. Sometimes it's even higher. So sometimes we see high risk with less exclusions for a specific policy, 10 to 25 grand. So it really depends what you're doing. Obviously, these are the minimum premiums. So the issue with that is if you're a small security guard, sometimes the minimum premium is more than, hey man, I'm making $75,000, my insurance is $25,000. What the heck? Yeah, because you're hitting the minimum because of what you're doing. So when we work with small security guard officers, it's more of a give and take. Hey, maybe we don't start with the high risk. We start with the small risk, build yourself 2 to 3 years of good loss history, no losses. Then we move over to the high risk. Established, larger security guard officer companies, we can go to markets because they have claims history that's favorable and there's a lot of premium there where we're over the minimum. Okay, so when you're a small security guard officer starting out, I would suggest it's very hard to get affordable insurance for those high risk activities. We can try, and we've done it in the past, but it's one of those things where it's like, hey, we need to work together to make sure that we help you become profitable in business and working with the insurance company to do so. Okay, so professional liability usually only adds about $1,000, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, depending on the activity that you're doing. It could be more. Workers' compensation is not too bad, depending on your state. I would say kind of 50 to 100 grand. You're looking at about 1,500, maybe 1,100, and all these are just assumptions based on where you're at. It's all over the place, so you cannot quote me on this. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Okay, so I am just telling you from what I've seen in 48 states of a grand average. Okay, commercial auto, depending on the vehicle, could be anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 in some states like Florida that are higher risk and that have higher auto insurance rates. But I would say all in, if you're budgeting, if you're a small security guard company, I would say 5 to 7 grand, maybe even 10 grand, 5 to 7 grand all in for all coverages if you're doing up to 100 to 200,000 a year in low risk activities. Higher risk, I would budget maybe 10 to 15,000. And if you're doing super high risk like government facilities, you're gonna be looking at over 25,000. So that's kind of where it runs. And how do you get a quote? Well, super easy. You go to the first comment on this video, you'll see a phone number and a link. You can either call us or you can follow the link to get a quote on our website, on our security guard page, and we'd be happy to help you out. Again, we operate in all 48 states. If you're in Hawaii and Alaska, we might be able to help you in the future. Maybe by the time you watch this, we're in that state. We just don't get a lot of activity there, so we're not in there. But again, we'd be happy to help you out and provide a great service for you. We turn certificates of insurance around same day. Again, we make sure we review contracts to make sure that your insurance is applicable to what you're doing. And we have a great team of agents. When you call in, if you want to speak with me, you can, but I have a whole sales team. So if you have a specific question and just request to speak with Nate Jones, but we have a whole sales team that's what they do, that's what they focus on. But I'm here to explain the coverage to you and tell you how we can help you out. So as always, take care. And if you like insurance content, maybe you do, I don't know, probably not. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Or if you think I did a great job explaining today's video, hit subscribe. You don't even have to watch our content, but it's cool that we have more subscribers. Thanks. Bye.